What if suddenly you woke up and discovered that to the entire world you never existed? Your house belongs to someone else. Your friends don't know who you are. Your family looks at you like a complete stranger. What would you do if you realized you're dead, but still alive? This is the story of a man who died twice. And the question that remains is, if you had a second chance, would you make better choices this time? He suddenly woke up. His vision was still blurry, and the distant sound of monitors and machines made the environment feel even more unreal. He was lying in a white bed with an inexplicable sense of discomfort. His head was throbbing, as if a pressure was crushing him. He tried to move, but his muscles felt heavy, as though he was trapped inside his own body. When he was finally able to open his eyes completely, he saw what appeared to be a hospital room. It was white and cold, but he didn't recognize the place. His heart raced, but his breath was shallow and he could barely focus. The bright white light was so intense, it seemed like it was meant to clear not only the space, but also his mind. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His eyes widened in panic as he searched for someone to explain what was happening. A doctor entered and he tried to call out, but no one seemed to notice him. The doctors looked at him with a mix of shock and confusion. Something was wrong. They didn't recognize him. Even stranger, the way they whispered to each other, murmuring words like, "impossible," and "this can't be real." Something was happening, but he couldn't understand. He tried asking questions, but it was useless. He realized that the hospital seemed familiar, yet he had no clear memory of how he got there. He knew he should know this place, but the feeling of being lost consumed him. He felt a heavy pressure on his chest, as if he were being buried alive. When he was finally allowed to leave, he had no idea what to do. He tried to leave the building, but what he found outside left him in shock. The world didn't recognize his face. The city looked the same, but everything felt distorted. Nothing was as it should be. There was no one who knew him. He didn't exist anymore. Desperate, he walked through the streets and entered a cafe where he used to have coffee every morning. But when the barista looked at him, she didn't see the regular customer. He was a stranger to her. She looked at him with a polite smile, but her eyes didn't recognize him. He ordered his usual coffee, but she simply stared at him, not understanding what he was saying. Then a terrifying thought crossed his mind. He was invisible to everyone. To the world, he simply didn't exist. It was as if he had never been there, as if his name had never been written anywhere, as if his steps had never touched the earth. Everything he knew seemed to have vanished. He tried to go to his house, but when he arrived, he found a different house, or rather, a house that was occupied by other people. When he knocked on the door, he was greeted by a woman who looked at him as if he were a complete stranger. She rejected him without hesitation, as though she was sure he didn't belong there. When he looked at her, he tried to remember, but he didn't know what to do. She wasn't his wife. Those weren't his children. He no longer had a family. They had disappeared. He fell into a state of panic. He tried to find his friends, people he knew. He tried accessing his bank accounts, his records, but nothing worked. Everything was blank. He didn't exist anymore in the system. Nothing functioned for him. It was as if he were a ghost, a forgotten memory without any significance in the world. Then, sitting on a park bench, he noticed a presence beside him. A man in a suit with a calm expression, watching the city with a distant gaze. The man seemed in no hurry, and his appearance felt familiar yet strange, as if he had been there before, but never truly. Without saying a word, the man handed him an envelope. When Daniel looked at the contents, he found a single phrase written inside. Choose your priorities better. You only have one life, or maybe two. At that moment, a sense of clarity washed over him. He realized what had happened. Before the accident, he lived an unsustainable routine. He worked incessantly, always chasing something that never seemed enough. Family, friends, meaningful moments. They were always put off for later. But later never came. Now there was no more past. He was no longer that man obsessed with work. There were no more chains to hold him back. He was a man without history, but with a future entirely to rewrite. But the question that echoed in his mind was, would he make the right choices this time? Now that he had a chance to start over, would he be able to value what truly mattered? Or would he waste the time that life had given him? And you? If you had the chance to start anew, what would you do?